vision, leadership, workplace-related topics. The Voices of Victory podcast show. Subscribe today. Let's go.
Vision, leadership, self-esteem, workplace-related topics.
Subscribe.
The Voices of Victory podcast show.
Voices of Victory.
Vision,
Voices of Victory.
leadership,
Voices of Victory.
workplace-related topics.
The Voices of Victory.
Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory.
It's time for the show. You are now listening to the Voices of Victory podcast show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mario D. Leone.
And welcome to Voices of Victory podcast. I am your host, Mario D. Leone. And today is going to be an episode that's deep, probably one of the deepest episodes that I've ever done. And deep doesn't constitute sad, by the way. Deep does constitute emotional in this case, but it's not about sentimentality. It's going to be much more than that. Today's title is No Map. No Map, becoming the cartographer of your own life. No map. Well, let's get into it, what it really means. Today is going to be reflective, evocative. It's going to be important, but here's what I want to break down, is that there comes a moment in every leader's life, in every soul's life, when you wake up and you realize there's no map. Not because you're lost, but because you're first. First to leave the role, first to speak the truth, first to create something that didn't exist before. That's not a mistake. That's a calling. So this episode is about what happens when we stop looking for the way and start realizing that we become the way, that we're in the process of going forward. So there's an illusion for a lot of people that there's this map in life and we have to follow it. But most of us are just trained to follow. We follow the step-by-step programs. We follow the career ladders. We follow the social roles. This is the way it's always been done, right? These are the maps we're handed, safe, predictable, legitimized, and the map is not the territory. It's what a lot of people may not understand. And from childhood, our brains are trained to seek cognitive closure. We want certainty because uncertainty feels uncomfortable, like danger. But when it becomes personal growth, real growth, you learn to live in the unknown, even though it's uncomfortable, because we know and understand there's gold within discomfort. The path of individuation requires moving beyond your inherited structures, your inherited thought patterns, your conditioning, what your parents taught you, and choosing your own and realizing that there's something far greater and far bigger than what you imagined. So who created the map that you're following? Who? This is the right way to live. This is the right way to love, the right way to lead, right? Can only do it this way when it turns into a have to, ought to, or should, right? You got to realize there's no map. There's no map. You quit your job, you leave the relationship, you say no when you're expected to actually say yes, and suddenly you're free. You're terrified, you don't feel comfortable about it, baby. But we have to understand, freedom means nobody is handing you the life script anymore. And that's where most people retreat. But this is where victory actually lives. It lives in that uncertainty. This moment can trigger what's called an existential anxiety because it's discomfort. It's the discomfort of pure freedom. It's what Viktor Frankl calls the dizziness of freedom. But this discomfort is a sign that you're finally making choices that can lead your life, lead your soul, lead your heart. Now, this is a quote from me, and if you remember it, that would be great. When you stop following someone else's map, you don't get lost. You actually begin. Mario D. Leone. So you got to become the cartographer, the person who creates their map, right? Being the cartographer when there's no map at all. When there's no map, then what are we doing? Well, you're making one. You're making one with every choice, every failure, every line in your journal, every mile on your feet. You're charting your territory. No one has walked exactly the way you will, and you're drawing from the contours of a life built from truth, not from conditioning or tradition. But what's the logical point here? Well, being a cartographer of your life, it means you test things, you experiment, you don't guess, you pause, you stop, you don't panic and freak out. You listen inward before you seek outward approval. You hear yourself out first. You iterate, you try try, you adapt, you keep on moving. In terms of leadership, this is the difference between a reactive leader and a generative leader. One follows, one forms and shapes. But what stops us? Well, of course, the fear of making mistakes, right? Because everything's got to be perfect all the time. But there's no such thing as a wrong turn when you're mapping a new land. There's nothing but discovery. The need for validation, which happens to a lot of people. When you're first, you won't get an applause. You may get a silence. That doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're early, and that's fine. And of course, we have external comparison. Everybody loses their way by comparing themselves to other people. You're not behind. You're building from bedrock. The skyscraper comes later. Their journey's not your journey. Your journey's not theirs. The soul, our life, it doesn't want a pre-made road. It wants terrain, real, messy, beautiful terrain, yours. And you have to carve out your map when things aren't always going in the direction that you want them to go. So where in your life are you waiting for a map you know will never arrive? Maybe you're in a relationship and you're waiting for it to go a certain way. Where are you ready to trust your feet instead of the blueprint, of what you think's going to happen? Try doing one thing this week without asking permission. A small action that doesn't follow the old script. Because victory isn't a destination on the map. It's the sound of your boots hitting the uncharted earth and you deciding to walk forward anyway. We fall into the myth of arrival. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I'm married. I'll be happy when I'm in a relationship. I'll be happy when I get that money. I'll be happy that. That's the myth of arrival. It's one of the most damaging illusions in modern life is the idea that there's this final destination, this arrival point where everything clicks, everything falls in place, and you finally get to relax because the map somehow, quote unquote, might have worked. At least a previous map might have. But that's not how life always unfolds. There is no there. There is no there. Though there is no point. There is no there. Arrival is that myth. What's real is presence, being in the process. What's real is the moment that you choose to live aligned with your truth. In other words, you're not just following a direction for the sake of following a direction. You're actually moving in a different direction because it aligns with your values. It's aligned with your truth. Even if it's only just one breath, 1 hour, one brave decision, one step, and then you do it again. And that's the real journey. And it might be uncomfortable. That's the only destination that matters. Because there's a concept of unknowing, right? That we don't know, we want certainty, and living without a map is not recklessness. It's reverence. We could have a plan for life, but we have to be emotionally flexible. It's a direct posture that says, I trust what I cannot yet see. However, I'm going to create what's going to be in front of me. In the great mystical traditions that are out there, unknowing or not knowing is kind of a sacred concept, but it's where the revolution and revelation actually begins. So when you let go and fall into your truth, that there's no pre-made road for you, you become intimate with the flow of your new journey. You're no longer asking anyone to give you certainty. You're learning to dance with the mystery. You let go of fears and you learn to dance with the mystery of life. You dance out of creation. You create what's in front of you, not out of being lost in the wilderness. Your life is data. I've spoken about this before. Your life is the data. It's the information. We control what things mean to us. In a world obsessed with metrics, and models, we forget the most trustworthy source of information. Trustworthy source of your data is your own life. Your own life, not 50 other people. Your experiences, your body, your reactions, they are the feedback. And when you make an effort and it fails, you don't label yourself as broken. You analyze the damn terrain. You revise your route. Being a cartographer doesn't mean you never stumble. It means you learn to map with a little mercy and self-compassion on yourself. You create your own map, your own way, your own direction, and you explore along the way. Because there is a courage to be seen. There's a lot of things that are maybe unfinished, like you don't really know what's around the corner in your life. You don't know. It's unfinished. The path is not showing up in front of you. So that's the hardest part about creating your own map, is that people will see you mid-journey, halfway formed, not really understand who you are and what you stand for, because they only see a part of the picture. That's the hard part, is you may feel unsure, but that's vulnerable. That's all about being vulnerable. But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's proof. It's proof of participation. It means you're alive. It means you're engaged. It means you're evolving. We were not put here to look perfect. We were put here to be transformed, and transformation is messy, noisy, scary, and incomplete, because we are growing, shaping, and changing. You are a constant. You are a process. You are in the process. And sometimes, even if it is painful. Now, there is a legacy without a map. Think of the people that you admire most, the ones who've changed the game, they've shifted the culture, they've lived fully, but none of them had a map. They had moments. They had choices. They had integrity. They really didn't know which way it was going to go. They had imagination. They were able to bring that imagination down to earth. And the same is available to you, is that every time you choose presence over performance, you choose showing up over conformity, you show courage over conformity, you add a landmark to the terrain for someone else to actually follow. So even though there's no map, you're leaving one behind. That's the fun part. That's where you get to be a mentor for other people if you decide. And sometimes we have to begin again and start over and stir life's waters. And sometimes you have to begin again, but this time from a place of wisdom, not a place of loss, from insight. And sometimes we don't know what's around the corner, but we have to learn as we go because we're faced with the level of uncertainty that we've never experienced before. And then uncertain, that can seem daunting, maybe even painful, but we carve out our own path because fate is what happens to you, but destiny is what you actually do with it. And when we start over in life, it's not always from zero. We're starting over from an insight. We have to trust that sometimes you're not going to know what's around the corner, and you may not know what's next, but you have to be able to trust who you are, trust yourself, and give yourself the credit to know and understand that you have the capacity to get through the journey, even though you don't know what's next. You have to be able to trust yourself. Have that concept of trust. So important for you. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you in the next episode.